In May of 2010, the Strike Brigade cases the brigade and regimental colors and deploys to Kandahar, Afghanistan. They first arrive at Kandahar Airfield, a base ran by International Security Assistance Force, aka ISAF. They move and build forward operating bases and combat outposts in the Taliban-infested districts of Arghandab, Maywand, and Zari, the birthplace of Taliban and Mullah Muhammad Omar, their spiritual leader. Strike is the first U.S. Brigade combat team in this region, ever. Over the next year, the 2nd Brigade combat team would join forces with units from 3rd Squadron, 2nd Stryker Cavalry Regiment, 2nd Battalion, 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 1st Battalion, 66th Armor Regiment, 71st Explosive Ordnance Disposal Group, 1st Brigade Combat Team, 101st Airborne Division, 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 101st Airborne Division, 1st Brigade, 4th Infantry Division, 4th Squadron, 4th Cavalry Regiment, 212th Military Police Detachment, 2nd Engineer Battalion, 176th Engineer Brigade, 184th Ordnance Battalion, 52nd Ordnance Group, and the Afghan National Army's 3rd Kandak, 205th Corps. Together, they would be known as Combined Task Force Strike. Right from the start, in May, Combined Task Force Strike saw daily kinetics in areas south of Highway 1, Afghanistan's main route into the city of Kandahar. There, they would witness for themselves Taliban's ruthlessness towards its people. Strike's 1st Battalion, 502nd Infantry Regiment would fire the first shots in Zari, in an area called Poshmore. Under the name Operation Hamkari, the unit would be the initial strike attack in the Taliban's backyard. National Public Radio's Tom Bowman and David Gilkey would be one of many to embed with Strike.
It's a maze. It's like fighting in a labyrinth with the possibility of mines, and that's another thing. It's a psychological factor of the mines being out there, and then the walls of the maze as you're moving. In the back of your mind is always, where's that pressure plate? Where's that IED that's going to be going off any second?
We're moving further than most people have walked in 2 years, and it's real, and people get killed on both sides. People get hurt all the time, and it's very demanding, and it's easy to do for a week, it's easy to do for a month, but it's very difficult to do for a whole year.
We talk to our enemy almost daily. And I have stood and talked to Taliban face to face and I've asked him about his farm and his houses and what medical things he needs and things like that. And I knew he was Taliban, just from the way he was acting and how his story didn't make sense. But he has no weapon. He has no hostile intent towards us. He's just there to wait and watch, and as soon as we show a sign of weakness, to attack. And that's the most frustrating thing. That's very difficult to imagine. Is it's living amongst your enemy but not being able to do anything about it, because he doesn't present himself and he doesn't act like an enemy until he wants to.
They're cowards to the fullest extent. Someone who fires any kind of weapon at you, throws it down, then picks up, an inanimate object that deems him, a non-hostile target, because they know that we actually fight with rules, and there's things that we won't do and can and cannot do. There is no rules for them.
bullets start coming in, and the sound of a bullet coming at you is something that you have to experience. It's both frightening, exciting, and confusing, and you can't tell from the sound where it's coming from. And so we find ourselves taking fire, and just mentally all you're thinking of is somebody's shooting at me. I don't know who, I don't know why, and I don't know from where. Your educated mind and your primitive self are fighting each other. Your primitive self is saying, bury your head in the sand and hide behind something, and your trained mind is saying, move, attack, destroy the enemy. And you have to battle those two and come to some kind of a medium.
Hey Doc, what's his status? Lost a little bit of blood, but he's got maxillofacial damage.
As a medic, I think the hardest thing for me is where to get started, because a lot of times I'm seeing guys that have been blown to literally pieces, and I got to figure out where to start. And a lot of times there's just so much wrong with them. You point your finger and start there, and then work your way around the whole body. I think the toughest part psychologically for me and what I do is the smells. I mean, you'll never forget these smells. I mean, everything's got a very unique smell, and a lot of times I know what's going on. I can smell burns or blood or things like that. So my mind's already preparing me for what I'm going to run into.
Now we're getting shot from over there, I think.
You know some of these guys on a real personal level, and it's tough not to get emotionally involved, but then again, you get emotionally involved and you lose track of the situation, then you're going to get other people hurt. So you got to focus on the bigger picture.
We fight, and we wake up the next morning, continue to fight, because to our left and to our right is the man that you've worked with, the man that you trust, and for lack of a better term, we all love each other.
You build a bond that you can't get in a gang, you can't get it in family, you can't get it in church, you can't get it on a sports team. This is something that you have for the rest of your life. You've been through something with that individual that no one else can replace.
The remainder of the summer would be no different for the Strike Brigade's top guns, artillerymen turned infantrymen, in the historic Arghandab River Valley. 3 straight months of 100-plus degree weather and a non-stop war with an entrenched, well-equipped, determined enemy faced the strike soldiers. Late July and into August, the tide began to turn in the Dab during what is now known as the Battle of Bakersfield, an offensive where Strike's 1st Battalion, 320th Field Artillery Regiment, attacked the central Arghandab Taliban stronghold. Lieutenant Colonel David Flynn, the top gun commander, would say, "We made it our mission to take Bakersfield away from the Taliban. It is critical for us to have this. It falls on the road that leads to our cops and was one of their strongholds. But we fought through attacks, IEDs, and everything the Taliban had in the Arghandab River Valley. The Taliban no longer has control over the area." A total of 23 combined task force strike soldiers would fall those first 3 months, and twice as many would be seriously wounded. The Taliban still remains out of power in the Arghandab River Valley.
Breaking news we told you about. It's called Operation Dragon Strike. It's a massive U.S. offensive in southern Afghanistan. 8,000 American troops, along with Afghan and international forces, are moving to take control of territory that the Taliban has controlled for years.
September would become a historical mark for Afghanistan and its people. On September 15th, Operation Dragon Strike began. The aim of the operation was to reclaim from Taliban the strategic southern province of Kandahar, known as the Heart of Darkness. With about 8,000 coalition and Afghan troops engaging Taliban and insurgent forces, Combined Task Force Strike would kill or capture nearly 1,000 enemy combatants from September to early November by the way of combined arms and complex air assault operations. With IEDs being the main weapon of insurgents, anti-personnel obstacle breaching systems, mine-clearing line charges, and military working dogs were common on the battlefield. 3-2 Wolfpack in charge of Maywan, 2nd Battalion 502nd Infantry Regiment, Strike Force in Western Zari, 1st Squadron 75th Cavalry Regiment, the Widowmaker, Strike Cav in Central Zari, 1st Battalion 502nd Infantry Regiment, 1st Strike in Eastern Zari. The top guns would hold down Arghandab. 2nd Brigade Special Troops Battalion, Raptor, and the 526th Brigade Support Battalion, Best by Performance, were spread throughout the front lines, supporting all strike units. Strike would take over key terrain from the Taliban during the operation in the Horn of Panjwai, a place the insurgents once called untakeable. The Rakkasans of 1st Battalion, 187th Infantry Regiment, then nicknamed the Strikeasans, removed it from Taliban's grip that October. General David Petraeus, ISAF commander and former 101st Airborne Division commander, personally selected the unit to conduct Dragon Strike.
Is that what you are doing is historic. It is extraordinary. You know, there's some folks back there that every now and then say our Army doesn't know how to fight anymore because Petraeus has them doing nation building or something like that. And I'd love for them all to come out here and see how you have used combined arms against a very resilient enemy who is adaptive and is smart and who knows the terrain and is determined to hang on to it until confronted with the kind of power that you represent. What you have done, again, is absolutely extraordinary. You don't realize it because you're living it, because it's, even with all the adventure and excitement, you know, the moments of fear as well as the moments of everything else, it's still the Groundhog Day experience. The eyes of the world are on you. Kandahar is enormously important to this effort. But as this continues, and as you close in on the final areas on the Horn of Panjwai, as you establish the hold force, we've got to get them in here and they've got to understand what it is that you have done, the skill with which you've done it, the valor that's been demonstrated along the way, and the tremendous leadership by our commissioned, warrant, and non-commissioned officers. Now, this just isn't about the whole deal about how many medals of honor are coming out of Iraq or Afghanistan. This is about day-to-day valor that is extraordinary, and yet we've gotten used to it. It's about your counterparts, your comrades, Team Merrill, going out there night after night with the task force, getting into massive gunfights, doing incredible damage to the enemy, and thinking it's just another day at the office. And we're going to put them, I'm going to personally sign their recommendation for a presidential unit citation. I've already told your commander I want each of these battalions put in for Valorous Unit Awards, perhaps more as well. You don't realize the significance of this, and again, what it is you're doing and how courageous this stuff is. You've taken it for granted. Well, look, a lot of us have been doing this nonstop since 2001, and this is one of the most significant combat operations that I've seen during that time. That includes the fight to Baghdad, every one of the Fallujahs, Sadr City, Bakuba, Ramadi, Baghdad, all the rest of this stuff. This is really impressive. And what's most impressive is that while we have had some tough losses, they have not been, frankly, what a lot of us feared they would be, because of the skill and the will of all of you and the way that you brought together combined arms. And again, today it's a privilege to pin those on some of these heroes and recognize others who have shed blood in the service of our nation.
An infantryman with 1st Strike's Alpha Company would become a hero during Operation Dragon Strike and would later be awarded the military's second highest award, the Distinguished Service Cross. The historic gains came at a great cost 25 Combined Task Force Strike soldiers would make the ultimate sacrifice during this time frame.